Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira, on Rajya Sabha Television. Over the next half an hour, we'll bring you a roundup of all the significant events to have happened around the world this week. But first, a look at the headlines. US President Donald Trump hits out at Democrats over demands for the resignation of US Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Sessions alleged to have contacts with Russian officials during Trump's campaign. US President indicates softening of stance on tough immigration rules in his first address to the joint session of Congress. Trump calls for support on initiating reform. British Prime Minister Theresa May suffers a serious setback to her Brexit timetable. UK's upper house of Parliament passes amendment to the Brexit bill. Polish lawmakers spark sexism row in European Parliament, calls women weaker, smaller and less intelligent. Korwin Mikke backs up his claims with a series of seemingly unrelated statistics. Our top focus on the program this week. Jeff Sessions, the US Attorney General, withdrew from any probe into alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. After it emerged he had contacts with Russian officials. Pressure is mounting for the appointment of a special prosecutor to investigate Russia's alleged meddling in the US presidential election and possible contacts between Donald Trump's campaign and Moscow.
Protesters demanding the resignation of Attorney General Jeff Sessions on a day when he rescued himself from investigations into alleged Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election.
The reason I believed I should recuse myself is because I was involved in the campaign. To a degree, I think it would have been perceived as wouldn't be objective in participating in an investigation that might involve the campaign. I do not confirm or deny any investigation. I just felt like I should clear the air.
Sessions maintained that he did nothing wrong by failing to disclose that he met last year with Russia's ambassador in the middle of the presidential campaign.
And I did not mention in that time that I had met with the ambassador, and so I will definitely make that a part of the record as I think is appropriate. We are having a lot of leaks today in Washington that I do believe are troubling. A lot of it would appear to be in violation of the law, and it's an unhealthy trend.
Organized by democratic advocacy groups, the protesters chanted slogans stating the people have a right to know.
Jeff Sessions has got to go. The people have a right to know. He lied under oath. He lied under oath. He lied under oath.
Sessions, a long-term US senator and a high-ranking player in President Donald Trump's campaign, announced his decision to quit after several fellow Republicans suggested the move would be appropriate.
I don't think what was said about that meeting I had with the Russian ambassador was legitimate. I think it was hyped beyond reason, and I think it was unfair.
President Donald Trump called the demands for Sessions' resignation a total witch hunt, a description that was echoed by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
Собственно, послы назначаются ради поддержания.
Ambassadors are appointed to support relations with certain state, and these relations are supported by meetings, talks, contacts with the official representatives. And this practice has never been disputed by anyone. I can only use the quote distributed by the media today. It all looks like a witch hunt.
On Wednesday night, the Washington Post reported that the US Attorney General Jeff Sessions had not disclosed his two meetings with the Russian ambassador before President Donald Trump took office.
Понимаете, что вменяется как бы послу Кисляку и...
What the Russian ambassador and his conversation partners are accused of. Our ambassador is accused of having contacts with American politicians who were in opposition to ex-President Barack Obama's administration. To be fair, this is the essence of accusations. We do not want to copycat, and we won't copycat.
По-честному.
While there is nothing legally wrong with the meetings, the reported contacts raised questions about the White House's statement that it knew of no further contacts with the Russian officials beyond those by fired National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, joining me for a chat this week to talk about this is Pramit Chaudhuri, foreign editor of the Hindustan Times. Welcome and thank you for joining me on the program. Michael Flynn has already resigned as a result of what happened with him and his connections with Russia. The same seems to be happening with the Attorney General of the United States. Is this finally going to lead to Donald Trump?
I have my doubts. There's so far no evidence. The point is that what Sessions did is not illegal. There's nothing wrong with a U.S. Senator meeting a foreign ambassador.
Sure.
The issue was that under oath, he claimed that he had had no communications as a member of Trump's campaign with any Russian officials. And his argument is should we say, very borderline defense, which is that I spoke to the Russian ambassador as a senator and not a campaign official. Now, it is lying under oath, which is perjury, which is a felony, which would automatically not only force him to resign, it would theoretically open him up to prosecution. Now, Trump has never under oath said that he's never met any Russians or anything of the sort. So, at present, there's no reason that even if Trump were to be connected to meeting Russian officials or talking with them would necessarily be a crime. The only issue would be if the present intelligence investigation as to whether Russians hacked the Democratic National Committee website and whether Trump or any of his officials assisted the Russians, which so far nobody seriously takes that seriously, that would of course be a major crime. But that's a separate investigation that's running on a separate track, and that's what Sessions had to recuse himself from.
Sure. So was it the right thing to do then for Sessions, considering the tremendous amount of pressure that he was under to recuse himself from the ongoing investigation?
I think he doesn't have much choice, because even his fellow Republican senators, even those, his closest friends like Lindsey Graham from the American South like himself, all publicly said that while he doesn't have to resign, but he has to get himself out of the investigation. So that was the first victory for the Democrats. Right now, the Republicans are staying with Sessions, saying he doesn't have to resign. But the point is now he will be, the investigation into the hacking will now automatically incorporate Sessions into its ambit. So the first step is already the Justice Department has asked him to respond to questions which for now are on email, but we'll see what happens.
Indeed. Much was expected to happen between the United States and Russia after Donald Trump took over. It's been almost 45 days now since Donald Trump took over, but nothing much has really happened between the relationship between the two countries. What happens now to the US-Russia relations? Are they going to take it forward? Are we going to expect something in the near future?
Well, I think this is going to be the main fallout of the Flynn resignation, the Sessions investigation, the investigation into the hacking, and now we're seeing further interest in the fact that Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, met the Russian ambassador. His son, Donald, took a fee from a think tank that was sponsored by Russia, and so on, and then a couple of his other advisors, Jason Greenblatt and so on, met other Russian officials. None of those were necessarily illegal, but this entire sort of network of meetings between Trump and Russia. The key Russian request was, and this is what most of this was about, is that please lift the sanctions against Russia.
Sure.
And if you lift the U.S. sanctions against Russia, not only will it allow us to stabilize the relationship, it would allow Russia to maintain a certain geopolitical independence, for example, from China, and work with the United States in fighting the Islamic State. That was the broad policy move that Trump had been campaigning on, and most of his officials had supported. But with all of these problems now breaking out, it's getting harder and harder for him to be able to actually get support for dropping the sanctions. And it's given an excuse not only for the Democrats, but for a lot of Republican congressmen who are not friendly to Russia at all. They're very Russophobic. to basically say this is not the time to lift sanctions. And at the very least, until all these investigations are over, which could take months,
Sure.
there will be no question of lifting sanctions. And if it gets worse, let's say Sessions is forced to resign, more and more dirt comes out on this, it would be effectively impossible for sanctions to be
as some
lifted.
people are suggesting, is this a major scandal in the making? Some in the United States have even gone on to say that it's going to be worse than the Watergate scandal.
So far, I don't see that evidence. But you know, when Watergate began, nobody thought it was a major
Yeah.
incident, right? You may remember that when the Washington Post floated the story on its syndication service, half the newspapers in America, that when there was break-in in the Watergate Democratic Party headquarters, half the papers didn't even take the story. They said, it's not that big a deal. Burglar broke in, nothing happened, right? So now, so yes, everybody's watching to see what happens. My instinct is no. I don't think it'll bring down the presidency, but it's consuming the first few weeks of his presidency. His legislative, game is basically on hold. Nobody's
Sure.
paying any attention to what anything else he's doing. And third, in foreign policy terms, it almost means the end of his ability to lift sanctions against Russia.
Indeed. We'll have to leave to that, Pramit Chaudhuri. Thank you so much for joining us on the program, putting things into perspective for us. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump addressed the U.S. Congress for the first time since his swearing in as president in January, softening his stand on harsh immigration policies. He called for adopting a merit-based immigration system. In his address, Trump also said that he has inherited a very bad economy where 94 million Americans are out of the labor force. Here's more.
The President of the United States.
Indicating a climb down, U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday said he's open to immigration reform. In his first address to the joint session of Congress on Tuesday, Trump appealed to Republicans and Democrats to work together on the issue. He called for a merit-based immigration system to help create jobs and raise workers' wages.
Switching away from this current system of lower-skilled immigration and instead adopting a merit-based system, we will have so many more benefits. It will save countless dollars, raise workers' wages, and help struggling families, including immigrant families, enter the middle class. And they will do it quickly, and they will be very, very happy indeed.
Promising to revive the American spirit, Trump said his administration is working on improved vetting procedures and said the United States can't be allowed to become a sanctuary for extremists.
Those given the high honor of admission to the United States should support this country and love its people and its values. We cannot allow a beachhead of terrorism to form inside America. We cannot allow our nation to become a sanctuary for extremists.
Trump also promised to repeal and replace Obamacare with an improved health plan.
We should help Americans purchase their own coverage through the use of tax credits and expanded health savings accounts. But it must be the plan they want, not the plan forced on them by our government. The time has come to give Americans the freedom to purchase health insurance across state lines.
The U.S. President also promised to send to Congress a budget to rebuild the nation's military, billing it as one of the largest ever increases in defense spending. He also condemned last week's fatal Kansas bar shooting in which an Indian engineer was killed. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, it's time for a short break on the program, but we'll be back with much more. Stay tuned.
Art arisen from a multi-hued cultural canvas. Tradition and cultural fervor dating back centuries. And encircling them all, there's a magic that awes. Embrace your nation's brilliant human warmth. What Watch Colours of India, Sundays at 9:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, British Prime Minister Theresa May has suffered a serious setback to her Brexit timetable after the Upper House of Parliament or House of Lords passed an amendment to the Brexit bill. The House of Lords amendment insists on guaranteeing the rights of European Union nationals currently living in the United Kingdom. The peers voted 358 votes to 256 in favour of the amendment, which means the Brexit bill will now return to the House of Commons for further debate. This will delay the passing of the bill and puts in doubt the end of March timetable flagged by British Prime Minister May to trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty and formally begin the separation from the EU. The vote is the first parliamentary defeat for the government's Brexit bill. May's Conservatives do not have a majority in the upper chamber.
They did feel strongly about it, but I still think they're wrong. I don't think you can separate the matter of EU nationals in this country from the situation of British citizens abroad, and we have a duty of care for them as well. And I think they ought to be considered together. I think by passing, if this became effective, I don't think it will, it would actually have the effect of leaving British citizens abroad stranded and neglected.
The Syrian government has completely recaptured the ancient city of Palmyra from Islamic State militants. Syrian forces and their Russian backers entered deep into the city after IS pulled out. The militants planted mines in several areas of the city before withdrawing. It ends the second occupation of Palmyra by the jihadists. IS fighters were driven out in March last year but managed to retake the city in December. The first time they controlled the area, the militants destroyed some of the most celebrated monuments, with UNESCO describing the destruction as a new war crime. The site contains monumental ruins with art and architecture from the 1st and 2nd centuries.
من الطيران الحربي السوري والروسي استعادت وحدات من قواتنا المسلحة بالتعاون مع القوات الرديفة والحلفاء مدينة تدمر والمناطق الحاكمة المحيطة بها بعد تكبيد تنظيم داعش الإرهابي خسائر كبيرة بالعديد والعتاد.
Well, 12 civilians have been injured in Mosul in Iraq in what appears to be the first chemical weapon attack in the battle for the Islamic State stronghold. Doctors say the hospitals in the area have been admitting patients showing clinical symptoms consistent with an exposure to a blistering chemical agent. The injuries were apparently caused in two separate incidents when mortar fire hit houses in East Mosul and victims complained of a foul-smelling chemical. It is not yet known who is to blame for the attack, but the mortars were apparently fired from West Mosul, which is still held by Islamic State. The developments come as rapidly increasing flow of people pouring out of western Mosul fleeing fierce battles between Iraqi security forces and IS fighters. The use of chemical weapons is forbidden under international law. IS has long been suspected of making and using crude chemical weapons in territory it controls in Iraq and neighboring Syria. Well, much else has unfolded around the world this week. Here's a roundup of the other international news in Globe Watch.
A Polish member of the European Parliament sparked outrage when he claimed that women must earn less than men in the workplace because they are weaker, smaller and less intelligent. Janusz Korwin-Mikke, the conservative and Eurosceptic politician from Warsaw, made the comments during Thursday's debate in the Brussels Parliament about the gender pay gap in Europe and how the EU can address it. He said women should earn less than men because they are weaker, they are smaller, they are less intelligent and they must earn less. That's all. Korwin-Mikke said his point was justified because there were no women in the first 100 chess players. Bangladeshi police have arrested the head of an Islamist militant group accused of inspiring followers to kill foreigners. Sheikh Muhammad Abul Qasem, who founded an offshoot of the larger Jamaat-ul-Mujahideen Bangladesh JMB group, was picked up on Thursday night in the Senpara Parbata area of the capital Dhaka. Qasem worked alongside Canadian citizen Tamim Chaudhuri and Nurul Islam Marjan,
Two men police accused of masterminding an attack on an upscale Dhaka cafe in July in which 22 people were killed. According to police, Kashim, who wrote several jihadi books and headed a religious school in northern Bangladesh, taught followers that killing foreigners would ease their path to heaven. The only North Korean held in Malaysia in connection with the death of Kim Jong-nam has been deported. Ri Jong-chol had been released from police custody due to insufficient evidence to press charges. He was handed over to immigration officials for deportation because he has no travel documents and left the country on Friday. Malaysia is also investigating a firm thought to be used by North Korea to evade sanctions on military exports. It has condemned the use of the powerful VX nerve agent in the 13th February attack. Two women were charged on Thursday with killing Kim Jong-nam by smearing his face with VX, a banned chemical weapon. Reports of abuses, including torture, remain widespread in Sri Lanka 8 years after the end of a decades-long civil war, the UN said on Friday, criticizing the government's slow progress in addressing wartime crimes. Sri Lanka's President Maithripala Sirisena swept to power 2 years ago, promising justice for the minority Tamil community and a full investigation into alleged atrocities committed under the leadership of his predecessor. But UN Rights Chief Zaid Rad Al Hussein said the island made worryingly slow progress in addressing its wartime past, warning this could threaten lasting peace and stability. His comments came in a new report in which the UN Human Rights Office said the use of torture was a serious concern. Vowing to plant their flag in China and that blood will flow in rivers, a video released this week purportedly by the Islamic State group shows ethnic Uyghur fighters training in Iraq, underscoring what Beijing sees as a serious threat. The Iraqi arm of Islamic State has released a half-hour-long video purportedly showing Uyghurs training, as well as some images from inside Xinjiang, including Chinese police on the streets. China is worried that Uyghurs, a mostly Muslim people from western China's Xinjiang region, have gone to Syria and Iraq to fight for militant groups there, having traveled illegally via Southeast Asia and Turkey. Hundreds of people have been killed in Xinjiang in the past few years, most in unrest between Uyghurs and ethnic majority Han Chinese.
In a rare event, NASA's MAVEN satellite circling the planet Mars had to perform an unplanned maneuver to avoid crashing into one of the planet's moons, Phobos. The Mars Atmosphere and Volatile Evolution, or MAVEN spacecraft, has been orbiting Mars for over 2 years, studying the red planet's upper atmosphere, ionosphere, and interactions with the sun and solar wind. Tuesday's collision avoidance maneuver is the first MAVEN made to steer clear of Phobos. In its new orbit, MAVEN will miss Phobos by close to 2.5 minutes. Well, let's shift gears now and bring you up to speed with some sports news from around the globe in our segment Sports Action.
Raymond Kopa, a former Real Madrid attacking midfielder who became the first French player to win the Ballon d'Or, has died. He was 85. A graceful player with a magnificent eye for passing, Kopa won the Ballon d'Or in 1958 when he reached the semi-finals of the World Cup in Sweden and helped Real win their 4th European Cup in a row, the second of his 3. Kopa, the son of Polish immigrants, started with Angers before joining Reims, the club where he spent most of his career. He played 45 times for France, scoring 18 goals. Kopa played against Real for Reims in the inaugural European Cup final in 1956 and joined the Spanish Giants that summer. Atletico Madrid striker Fernando Torres was discharged from hospital on Friday after having tests on the head injury he suffered in Thursday's 1-1 draw with Deportivo La Coruña. The 32-year-old spent the night in hospital after falling heavily in an aerial challenge with Alex Bergantinos. Atletico confirms scans showed he has no traumatic alterations or injuries and will need to rest for 48 hours. After former Liverpool and Chelsea striker Torres' injury in the 85th minute in La Coruña, players from both teams immediately rushed to him and called for medical help. He was assisted for several minutes by doctors before being taken off on a stretcher and transferred to a hospital. Luis Enrique has announced he will step down as Barcelona head coach at the end of this season. The The 46-year-old's contract expires in June and he will not renew, citing the need for rest. Enrique confirmed the news in the wake of Barca's 6-1 win over Sporting Gijón on Wednesday. He was thought to have previously come close to stepping away from the club at the end of a tumultuous first season in charge at Nou Camp. After replacing Tata Martino following the 2014-15 season, he won a treble of La Liga, Copa del Rey and Champions League titles. The following year he picked up a domestic double, but Barcelona have had a rough stretch recently. Maria Sharapova's participation in the first Grand Slam after the end of her doping ban is uncertain after French Open organizers admitted that they face a dilemma over the granting of a wild card. The Russian is due to return to competitive action on April 26th in Stuttgart, the day that her 15-month ban for testing positive for the banned substance meldonium ends. Other tournaments in Madrid and Rome have also offered her wildcard entries. However, French Tennis Federation President Bernard Giudicelli said he would be uneasy about inviting Sharapova to compete at Roland Garros for the tournament in late May. All-rounder Jimmy Neesham and spin bowler Jeetan Patel have been recalled to the New Zealand Test squad for the 3-match series against South Africa. They have replaced Matt Henry and Dean Brownlee as the new names from the squad that was named for the Bangladesh series in January. Patel last played a test for New Zealand last October in India following a 3-year break from the Test arena. In 21 tests, he has taken 58 wickets for an average of 48.48. The last time Patel played a test on home soil was in 2010 against Australia. Neesham's last test was in the game against India in Indore. He averages 37.94 with the bat in tests and 46 with the ball.
And finally, a drone camera captured spectacular footage of Sicily's Mount Etna, which erupted for the third consecutive day with fountains of lava. At 10,926 feet, Etna is Europe's most active volcano, and thousands of tourists flock to this Italian island to be amazed by it. Only the lucky few are able to witness the volcanic activity. I'm going to leave you with these volcanic visuals from Italy. Until next time, this is Frank Pereira signing off.